What's good? It's your boy Mixtape Moth, and today I'm gonna hit y'all with a review of the new Flea Lord album entitled Lord Talk Trilogy. Let's get to it. Flea Lord is a prolific rapper coming out of Queens, New York. I think it is safe to say that he is the hardest working rapper in the game at the moment. Yes, he even grinds harder than Griselda, if that is possible, and even Bay Area artists from the 90s and 2000s. I believe this project, Lord Talk Trilogy, is his 12th release of the year, which is a pretty impressive feat. This is produced entirely by God Bless Beats, who also did all of the production for Lord Talk 1 and 2. The first Lord Talk was released all the way back in 2017, so it's cool to see how Flea Lord has evolved since then. Although I can't say that I heard volumes 1 or 2, so I don't know how this project compares to the previous one, but I will say that if we look at this as a separate Flea Lord album, he definitely didn't disappoint on this release. It's a very solid body of work, pretty much like all of his projects in 2020. Now, some have obviously been better than others, but I have to state that none of his albums have come close to being whack. But to keep it a buck, much of Flea Lord's lyrical content is the same throughout most of his albums, so I don't have a whole lot to report on about his lyrics. I mean, he's not an artist that you have to spend a lot of time dissecting his bars. I more so enjoy Flea Lord projects because I like his grimy New York flow, and his albums are pretty much all well produced. I also look at Flea Lord as filling the Onyx void. I'm not saying that he's as technically gifted as Sticky Fingers or even as good as a rapper as Fredro Starr, but he definitely gives me that kind of feeling. But the thing that stuck out to me about this project is that we get to learn a little bit more about his backstory, how he made the transition from the streets to rap, and the impact that Griselda had on him. He also gets a little personal, even revealing some of the things about his mom and dad that I had no idea about. But with that being said, let me hit y'all with this track by track breakdown. The Lord Talk Trilogy intro has one of the hardest beats on the whole tape. It's a dark and bass heavy instrumental. It feels like a banger, and it really sets the tone perfectly for this Flea Lord project. Flea Lord states, "I'm majoring the smack good, took it to the burbs. I don't sell in these black hoods, loyalty and death tea. There ain't gonna be no next Flea. Let's see him about to drop another album next week." And given his current musical output, it's likely that he's being completely serious about dropping an album next week. On Line Stay Buzzin', Flea Lord talks about his work ethic, which he describes as legendary. This track has somewhat of a hustler anthem feel to it. I like the eerie piano loop and faint vocal harmony as well. Then on Supply and Demand, Flea Lord does something that I thought we would never witness. He gives us 3 verses. Now, this is huge for Flea Lord since he is known for giving you 16 bars and then calling it a day. The beat is pretty minimal with just a guitar loop, but it has that psychedelic quality. I thought his second verse was the best. This is followed up by a skit in which Flea Lord talks about Prodigy inspiring him to rhyme, and the first time he freestyled for Conway. And fortunately for Flea Lord, he's consistently leveled up as an artist ever since. Next up, we have the Ransom featured track, Real Recognize Real, and I suppose you could probably guess that this track would have the best lyrical content on the whole tape. Flea Lord spits a hard verse, and Ransom delivers as expected. Ransom states, "Fuck what you think, it's what the streets believe. You keep the cheese, I turn your block into Swizz without Alicia Keys." I like the dark and cinematic jazz style production here. It's got that heist music kind of feel. Then on the track, My Life on a Beat, Flea Lord shares a little of his life story on top of this Big Crit sounding beat. It just reminded me of the kind of instrumental that Big Crit would rap over. Flea talks being raised by the streets because his mom was murdered and his dad was a dope fiend. So this was one moment where he got a little personal, and I thought this was needed considering he tends to give us only surface level tough guy imagery in his raps. On Lord Mobbin, Flea Lord and some dude named TF, who reminds me of a less lyrical version of Stove God Cooks. Both spit grimy verses on top of this guitar driven sample. The beat also has a semi soulful sound. This might be my least favorite track, but it wasn't bad. It was just kind of cool. After that, we get the very crunchy Hell or High Water featuring Ito. The soul looped instrumental is very dusty, dirty, and vintage sounding. There wasn't necessarily anything about either of the two that stood out in terms of the lyrics, but I like this one for the raw and punchy production. Then on the second to last track, entitled Hotboxin', Flea Lord talks about, guess what? Weed. I do like the funky horn sample that he's rapping over, but this is another one of his very short songs. Afterwards is a skit from Conway's interview with Hot 97 where he talks meeting Flea Lord and how he believed that Flea Lord had the best verse on Juvenile Hell. And looking back on it, I actually agree. The album closes out with Lord Talk Trilogy outro. The beat is pretty epic, which seems fitting for Flea Lord to bring this trilogy series to a close. Overall, I give this album a rating of 3.5 out of 5. I don't think sonically this is as good as Pray for the Evil 2 or even Loyalty and Trust 2 produced by 38's Best, but I think it's a very solid release with very good production. What I did really like about this project is that I actually learned two things about Flea Lord. One, I learned more about his upbringing and the issues with his parents. Number two, I gained some insight into how he got into the music game. So if you haven't been keeping track of Flea Lord's career, then this album would be a good place to start since it gives you his musical backstory. You learn how pivotal his relationship with Prodigy of Mobb Deep was because it opened doors for him to be heard by Griselda, which has since brought him to the top of rap's underground. My favorite tracks include Lord Talk Trilogy intro, Line Stay Buzzin', Supply and Demand, Real Recognize Real, My Life on a Beat, and Hell or High Water. Let me know what you thought of this project in the comment section below. What should I check out next? It's your boy, Mixtape Moth. I'm signing out, but be sure to hit that like button and please subscribe. As always, it's peace and blessings. Flea Lord, Lord Talk Trilogy 1.